how a topper's essay is different from that of an aspirant's essay and how it fetches higher marks for the topper. Let's take example of this topic asked in 2023 essay paper. The topic was thinking is like a game. It does not begin unless there is an opposite team. Now, how would an aspirant attempt this essay? The aspirant would certainly try to give reference, give various examples as to how various thought processes take place when there is an opposing team, opposing party. Say, for example, an aspirant would want to give reference to Gramsci. Now, Gramsci's thoughts were placed in opposition to the prevailing capitalist thought. The aspirant might want to give reference to Gramsci's books and other works of Gramsci, essentially to state that Gramsci's ideas were generated or they were created in opposition to these prevailing ideas. But this particular write-up of that aspirant would fetch him only average marks. Now let's compare this with the topper's essay. Now again, the topic is same. Thinking is like a game. It does not begin unless there is an opposite team. And even the topper would give reference to Gramsci and show that Gramsci's idea was opposed to the prevalent capitalist thought process, but at the same time, the topper would ensure that the topic of the essay is dealt in entirety. Say, for example, there is a metaphorical expression in the topic which says, thinking is like a game. Now, the topper would bring in or elaborate on that element, and in this context, when we are giving reference to Gramsci, the topper would want to bring in that element of strategy. Now, any refined game is not played arbitrarily. There is a well thought strategy behind that game, be it the game of chess or any other refined game. So the example that the topper could take here is war of position as propounded by Gramsci, where he states that a counter narrative has to be created in favor of the working class as opposed to the capitalist class, so that in the long run, the working class can win the war of position. And this could be compared with what we call as the positional play in chess. Again, in positional play, our pieces are arranged in such a manner as to fulfill our strategy in the long run. Quite similar to Gramsci's war of position. So this is how a topper's essay would stand out as compared to an aspirant's essay. Just to sum it up, the aspirant made reference to Gramsci and showed how it was opposed to the prevailing thought process of the capitalist class, and there were these two opposite teams. But the aspirant did not dwell upon the metaphorical aspect of how exactly his thought process or how exactly Gramsci's thought process was like a game. But on the other hand, the topper dwelled on that metaphorical expression and made that comparison between Gramsci's war of position and positional play as seen in the game of chess. Moving to the next topic, the next topic is inspiration for creativity springs from the effort to look for the magical in the mundane. Now, an aspirant would want to give reference of Newton as to how Newton discovered gravity. He saw an apple falling down on the ground and he would elaborate on that particular incident. But the aspirant would end that paragraph then and there as to how that apple or falling of that apple helped Newton understand greater dynamics of underlying physics. This particular paragraph or this particular thought process will again fetch just average marks to the aspirant. Now let's compare this with what a topper would write. The topic is same, and even the topper would elaborate on Newton's reference as he saw the apple falling down and so on and so forth. But then he would also try to convince to the examiner as to what was mundane and what was magical in that particular incident, or that followed that particular incident. Say for example, a fruit falling down from branch of a tree is a very mundane thing, it's a very everyday thing that we see in our everyday lives. But what is magical that came out of it? Now the topper could give example of the tremendous predictive power that scientists have today based on Newton's theory of gravity. Today we can predict the exact location and movement of celestial bodies by using Newton's theory of gravity. So that is something magical that came out of Newton's efforts. So as the topic says, inspiration for creativity springs from the effort to look for the magical in the mundane. Newton was able to derive something magical out of a mundane thing, and we have made, that topper has made a conscious effort to showcase what was earlier mundane and what was that element of magic that came out of that particular incident. The next topic is, a society that has more justice is a society that needs less charity. Now, an aspirant would score just average marks in this essay if he or she takes a very restrictive interpretation of the topic. Say, for example, the aspirant construes justice to be just economic, or having economic parity, or he or she construes charity to be only in the nature of philanthropy or through donations. Compared to this, how would a topper attempt this particular topic? That topper would not restrict himself or herself to philanthropy or donations when it comes to charities. The topper would go a step ahead and speak about or dwell on age related justice. Say for example, having too many old age homes, both government aided and private, says that elderly are not being taken care of at home. Similarly, gender justice. Here the topper would mention about the sexual minorities, the LGBTQ community. Now, if there was sufficient justice available to the LGBTQ community in the society, there would not have been a need for too much activism or volunteers to put in too much efforts for these particular communities. Similarly, the topper would give a reference to animal rights. Now we see various NGOs, various volunteers, organizations like PETA, and even local organizations working towards rescuing stray animals and even pet animals who are being abused. So, compared to an aspirant's essay, a topper would keep the essay more multidimensional, and he or she would not take a restrictive interpretation of the given topic. Rather, he or she would prefer a more broader connotation of this particular topic.